It was spring in Wyoming Territory, 1874, and the snow had just begun to melt off the peaks of the Bridger Range when Wade Connolly rode into the small, dust-choked town of Wren Hollow carrying a mystery in his stillbag. The weight wasn't just physical, it was the burden of loss. His brother, Jacob, had been found dead 2 states away in Colorado, shot once through the chest in what the sheriff called a random dispute over land. But Wade knew Jacob, and Jacob never owned land. What disturbed Wade most wasn't just how far from home his brother had died. It was what the lawman handed him afterward. Wrapped in a dirty bandana, buried deep in Jacob's bag, was a small iron key with a carved wooden handle. Tied to it with twine was a tag, Cabin 3, Willow Lake. But there was no known Willow Lake in Colorado. Wade knew that lake. It was in Montana, deep in the pine-covered hills near the Canadian border, a place only Wade and Jacob had known from their childhood hunts. There were no cabins there back then. With grief in his chest and the mystery burning a hole in his conscience, Wade mounted his horse and headed north. He had to find out why his brother had a key to a place that didn't officially exist, and who he was visiting there. But when Wade arrived at Willow Lake after 2 weeks of riding, he found something more unexpected than even the key. Cabin 3 existed, and someone was living in it. Cabin 3 stood in a clearing, modest and quiet, nestled between towering pines that rustled like whispers in the mountain wind. It looked recently built, logs fresh, chimney smoking, a garden half-prepped for spring planting. A brown mare was tied loosely to a rail out front, grazing with ease. And just beyond the window pane, Wade saw the flicker of movement. Someone was home. Wade didn't approach right away. He sat atop his horse at the edge of the tree line, heart beating harder than it had on the entire 2-week ride from Colorado. Something about this moment didn't feel like a discovery. It felt like a reckoning. Finally, with a key tucked in his coat pocket, he dismounted and walked toward the cabin, boots crunching the soft thawing earth. As he raised his hand to knock, the door opened before he touched it. A woman stood in the threshold. She wasn't what he expected. She wasn't armed. She wasn't frightened. In fact, she looked at him like she knew him. Long, dark auburn hair was tied back loosely with a ribbon. Her dress was plain, brown calico, but her face, smudged slightly with wood ash, was striking. Her eyes, gray-green like river stones, met his without flinching. "You made it," she said softly, almost like she'd been waiting. Wade's hand fell slowly to his side. "You know me?" She paused, her eyes flicking across his features. "You're Wade, Jacob's brother, aren't you?" Wade stiffened. "How do you know Jacob?" She stepped back, gesturing gently. "You should come inside." He hesitated only a moment. Inside, the cabin smelled of burning cedar and warm bread. It was clean, functional, built by someone who knew how to survive out here. There was a rifle over the hearth, a stack of books on the table, and a set of hand-stitched linens folded neatly on a chair. A place that was lived in, cared for. "I'm Claire," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "Claire Marin. Your brother and I, we met 2 years ago, out in Bannock. I was working at a boarding house." Wade's brow creased. "Jacob never mentioned you." She nodded. He wouldn't. He was good at keeping parts of his life separated. Wade took the iron key from his pocket and held it up. This was in his still bag when they found him. Cabin 3, with your name scratched on the tag. Claire's face darkened, and she turned toward the hearth. He was supposed to bring something back. Something important. Wade sat on the edge of a wooden bench, cautious but alert. "Why didn't you go with him?" Claire was quiet for a moment, then answered without turning. "Because I couldn't leave this place. Not yet. Not with what we buried here." That stopped him. "What do you mean?" She turned now, eyes sharp. "There's something you don't know about your brother, Wade. Something I'm not even sure he ever told you." The tension in the room was thick. Wade felt the air shift. "Try me." Claire hesitated, then reached behind the hearth and pulled out a small, rusted tin box. She opened it and handed Wade a folded letter. The paper was old, the handwriting rushed. It was Jacob's. "Claire, if anything happens to me before I return, show this to Wade. He won't believe you unless it's in my hand. And tell him the truth. I wasn't in Colorado for land. I was following a man who knows what happened to father." Wade's heart dropped. "Our father?" he muttered. He died in a barn fire when we were kids. Everyone knew that. Claire met his eyes. That's what you were told. But Jacob believed something else. He said he saw a man run from the barn that night. A man with a hawk tattoo on his left hand. Wade's stomach turned. Claire walked over to a bundle near the door and pulled back a wool blanket. Inside was a leather-bound journal, charred along the edges. Jacob's notes, maps, names, the truth, in pieces. And suddenly, Wade realized that Jacob's journey hadn't just ended with a key. It had started with a secret buried years ago. A secret their family never wanted uncovered. But what was it doing here, hidden with this woman in cabin 3? And why did Claire flinch every time he mentioned Jacob's death? As the sun slipped behind the trees and shadows crept along the cabin floor, Wade began to feel something colder than suspicion. It was the sense that someone, somewhere, was watching. And maybe, following. That night, Wade couldn't sleep. Claire had offered him the cot near the stove, but sleep wouldn't come, not with Jacob's burned journal sitting on the table beside him, nor with Claire's words echoing over and over again in his mind. There's something you don't know about your father. The log walls creaked as wind curled around the cabin. He heard the faint crack of ice shifting on the lake. Somewhere in the trees, an owl called once and went silent. Then he heard it, a second sound. Not wind, not branches, boots. In the snow. He sat up slowly, reaching for the hunting rifle that Claire had rested near the door. He glanced toward the window. A shadow shifted past the glass, too quick to identify, but unmistakably human. Claire came out of her room just as quietly, wrapped in a heavy wool shawl, eyes wide with alarm. You heard it too, she whispered. Wade nodded, rifle in hand. Someone's out there. Claire stepped forward and pulled open a hidden latch near the hearth. From behind the stone wall, she retrieved an old Navy Colt revolver, worn but loaded. Wade didn't ask why she had it. He already knew. Claire handed it to him without a word. She grabbed a lantern and gently cracked the cabin door. The Colt slammed in like a ghost. Together, they stepped outside. The moon lit the trees in ghostly silver. The mare was still tied, breathing heavily, ears alert. Wade scanned the forest line. Then he saw them. Footprints. Not just one set. 2. Leading from the tree line, circling the back of the cabin. Wade's stomach tightened. He motioned to Claire to stay low as he moved carefully around the back. Snow crunched beneath his boots. The prints were fresh, sharp-edged. Whoever it was, they'd been there minutes ago. Then he found something in the snow. A matchstick. Still warm. Someone had been standing there, close, maybe watching the cabin, and they'd lit something. He looked up, and there, hanging in the low branch of a pine, was a strip of red cloth tied in a knot. Wade pulled it down. It wasn't just any cloth. It had a black mark burned into the edge. A hawk. The same hawk Jacob had described in his letter. The same symbol tied to their father's mysterious death all those years ago. Wade turned to Claire, jaw tight. Someone followed me here. Claire's face paled. Then we don't have time. There's something buried near the edge of the lake. Jacob told me if anything ever happened to him, I had to show you. But we only go at first light. Wade nodded slowly. And somewhere deep in the woods, a branch snapped. Someone was still out there. Watching. Waiting. Dawn crept slowly over Willow Lake, casting a pale golden hue over the glassy surface of the water. Frost still clung to the grass as Wade followed Claire through the trees to a clearing near the water's edge. The lake was still partially frozen, its edges thawing into slush, but beneath the surface, something waited. Claire stopped near a crooked pine tree and knelt. She brushed away a pile of pine needles and thin crusts of snow to reveal a loose stone tucked beside a rotting stump. Beneath it, half buried in dirt, was a small metal box. Rusted, locked, and marked with 3 initials carved deep into the top, JCC. Jacob Caleb Connolly. Claire looked at Wade, her breath hitching. He told me this was the only thing he ever hid. That if someone found this, they'd know what happened to your father, and what was coming for him. Wade swallowed hard. His hands were cold, not just from the air, but from what he might find inside. With the iron key, the same one from Jacob's stall bag, he opened the box. Inside were 3 things. A folded letter, yellowed and sealed with wax. A drawing, hand-sketched, smudged with ash, of a barn, burning, and a figure running. The figure had a hawk tattoo on the back of his hand. And finally, a photograph, rare, old, and frayed. It showed Wade's father standing beside a man in a cavalry uniform, and that same hawk symbol on his holster. Wade stared at the photo. This means Dad didn't die in an accident. Claire nodded. Jacob said he overheard an argument. That your father was part of something, a shipment of stolen gold from the war. He wanted out, and someone didn't let him leave. Wade gripped the letter and opened it. It was addressed to him. Wade, if you're reading this, I didn't make it back. I tried to find the man in the photo. His name is Malcolm Red. His ex-cavalry, now hiding under different names. He's the one who set the fire. He thought Dad talked. He didn't. He's been looking for this letter. If he finds you, burn it. If not, finish what I started. Find Red, and make sure no other family loses what we lost. Jay! Wade stared out at the lake, the water silent and still. It wasn't just about his brother anymore. It wasn't even about their father. It was about the truth, something long buried and kept quiet by men in uniforms with shadows behind them. Claire touched his arm. There's more, Wade. Jacob said Red had someone watching this cabin. A local. Paid off. And if they know you're here, they'll come tonight. Wade turned, jaw clenched. Then we don't wait. We ride to town before sundown, and we bring this story with us. But just as they turned back toward the cabin, a gunshot echoed through the woods. Someone had found them first. The gunshot shattered the stillness like a bell tolling for war. Claire dropped to the ground, and Wade spun around, scanning the trees with his rifle raised. His heart was pounding, not from fear, but from the bitter confirmation. They were already surrounded. A voice rang out from the tree line. Drop the gun, Connolly. I just want the letter. Wade recognized the voice. Smooth, calm, and cold like iron dipped in whiskey. Malcolm Red. Wade stood slowly, keeping Claire behind him. You've been hunting ghosts, Red. My father's, my brother's, now me. Red stepped out of the woods, wearing a long coat lined with fur, his boots polished, his revolver drawn but lowered. He looked older than the photo, but his eyes were the same, ruthless and hollow. I told Jacob not to dig. He didn't listen, but I liked the boy. I gave him a quick death. Wade's knuckles went white around the stock of his rifle. You killed my brother. I gave him a chance to walk away, Red said. He chose to fight. Claire's breath trembled behind Wade. So you burned down the barn too? With his horse still inside. Red shrugged. Regrets for priests and cowards. That's when Wade saw it. A flash of movement to the left. Another man, flanking them with a shotgun. He counted quickly. At least 3 men, maybe more. Hired guns. He didn't have enough bullets for all of them. But he had something else. The truth. Wade slowly pulled the photograph and the letter from his coat pocket and held them high. You want this? Fine. But the moment I'm dead, these get mailed to every newspaper in the state. My horse is packed. It's already addressed. You shoot me, and you'll be a name in every headline from Cheyenne to Chicago. Red hesitated. For the first time, the hawk-eyed killer looked uncertain. Claire stood too, stepping beside Wade. You underestimated Jacob, and you'll regret underestimating Wade. A low growl rose behind them. Wade turned to see Claire's dog, an old shepherd, emerge from the trees, baring its teeth at the men circling from the right. The distraction was enough. Wade fired. The bullet slammed into the man with the shotgun. Claire dropped behind the log, pulling Wade with her as bullets tore through bark and snow. The chaos gave them cover to run. Wade fired again, keeping their pursuers pinned as Claire led them through a hidden trail Jacob had once shown her. They made it to the horses. Claire rode bareback, Wade beside her, the journal and letter secured to his chest. Behind them, the woods burned red with sunrise and gunfire. They didn't stop riding until the mountains swallowed them whole. Sunrise over mountains epilogue. Months later, the town of Dead River sat quiet under autumn clouds. Wade stepped into the post office with a newspaper under his arm. The Cheyenne Herald, headline blazing. Ex-cavalry lieutenant exposed in Western gold theft ring. Letters reveal cover-up. Malcolm Red was on the run now, hunted not just by Wade, but by the law. The letter Jacob had died for was now evidence, justice, and warning. Claire waited for him outside, wrapped in her blue shawl, her hand gently wrapped around Wade's. They had buried Jacob by the lake, where the ice no longer creaked with secrets. But Wade had kept one vow above all. He brought the truth into the light. And for the first time in his life, the ghost stopped following him.